Recording in progress.
Okay. Everybody bear with us as we're just working on some technological things. All right, there she is. View request. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the gang. We're probably going to have to mute one of these. There's
so sometimes they're
Kim.
I see the little chat going. Okay.
All right, so we hear Kim.
Kim, talk for me.
Hi.
All right.
Slight echo. It's all good.
Okay, guys, we're good to go. All right, so everybody.
I don't think Michelle was listening to a word I said, which couldn't have helped.
I wish you just did. Everybody, welcome. We are on two platforms tonight. We are on Zoom, so we can record this. We are also on Instagram Live for anybody who doesn't want to go over onto Zoom. And yeah, just dealing with some technological things. So everybody, thank you for joining us. If you see us going back and forth between two screens, you know why.
We decided to go super professional and figure it out on air.
Yes. Woo! That's how we roll. So we want to welcome Kim Goodhartz here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to be discussing some topics that come up very, very often amongst our members and non-members, people that just reach out and are looking for advice in this realm.
Sorry, I'm seeing the comments
and
already.
Kim is the expert in this field. So Kim, give everybody a brief introduction of you, your credentials, and how you take care of your client base every day.
Explain your awesomeness in a paragraph.
And why we're here.
Yeah.
All right. So, hi, my name is Kim. I'm an LPC, which stands for Licensed Professional Counselor. And I've been working in the field now, don't make me do math, let's say roughly 5-6 years, okay? So I work with all populations, but one of the most prevalent populations that I work with are people who suffer from eating disorders. And oftentimes, it's a co-occurring disorder. Sorry, my dog wants to say hi, so she might pop her head up. So.
Dogs are always allowed.
Yeah, it's a co-occurring disorder. So sometimes there are other things, anxiety, depression, there's a whole bunch of different things that can also be happening at the same time. But I do love when you ask me to come on and talk about these things because you guys are nutritional counselors, you know what you're doing, you're professionals. And I think that having those things hand in hand are so essential.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, so having a team, pretty much a support system, like aside from, your friends and your family, because I know that's one of the topics we're going to talk about, but having support from people around you, like what you do when someone tries to peer pressure you into maybe eating something that you're not comfortable with, or maybe, you have a fear of a type of food, or we'll dive further into it. But having a support system is so essential. So I love when you ask me to do these things.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. And it breaks our hearts sometimes because a lot of the viewers here, or the viewers that aren't able to watch this live, they'll be watching this tomorrow. They don't have support systems from the people that they consider the closest to them, spouses, parents, best friends. And, they come to us because we all have a common, interest in nutrition and mental health and whatnot. So to make sure that me and Randy are surrounded by professionals like yourself, that we can just contribute toward that support system is very, very important to us. And we only work with professionals that we 100% trust. So thank you so much again for being here.
Yeah, and a big thing with us is, it's always frustrating when someone doesn't have a support system, but it's even more frustrating when the people that are supposed to be their support system are the enemies even. I say it's one thing to just not give a shit. It's another to be actively hurting.
Yeah. Yeah. And anybody who's here, the comment section is open. So if you have questions for Kim along the way, or you want her to dig deeper into anything, please, put it in the comment section. We'll do our best to keep on top of it, or at least scroll back and catch up later. So we're all here together. We are all here for a very similar reason to discuss this topic. And that is an overview of disordered eating and everything that is entangled in that topic. So let's start at the basics. Give us an overview of, eating disorder, binge eating, recognizing unhealthy behaviors and habits. Let's kind of run through that first.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just
you guys are not in a timeout. Don't worry. Sorry.
I warned Kim about the Whippet triplets. Kim.
I was like starting to read it, and I'm like, I gotta concentrate on what you guys. Yeah. Can't have my brain going emergency spots. But yeah, so some of the main eating disorders, I mean, a lot of people have heard of, or maybe they haven't. I'll just kind of give little like brief definition. So there's anorexia nervosa, which is a form of self-starvation, like refusing to maintain like a normal body weight, really unhealthy, can land you in the hospital pretty much if you're not careful. There's bulimia, which repetitive cycles of binge eating with self-induced like vomiting, starvation, exercise-induced. We'll talk about that a little more. And then the big one that I see a lot is binge eating disorder, which it resembles bulimia, but without the like trying to compensate with behaviors after. So there's a lot of guilt surrounding it, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's binging a lot at one period of time, feeling like you don't really have control over this situation. Right. So those are the main ones, but all of these have just kind of this preoccupation with food, and most of the time a dissatisfaction in body shape or weight. And a lot of people, like I said before, compensate by exercising excessively, which is not healthy. And I actually kind of witnessed this the other day when I was in the gym, that I'm not passing judgment. I don't know the full story, but this person looked like they were about to pass out, and they just kept going and going and going. And I mean, you and I know, like when you're prepping for a show, like sometimes you feel that way. Yep. There's just something different when you see somebody who looks like they're about to pass out.
Now, a question that I get often is the difference between a binge versus I just overate.
Okay, so I just overate, like you'll feel uncomfortable. And also, like, what do you define as overeating? Because that is something else that can determine whether or not it has an eating disorder. Like, oh, I ate an extra French fry. Like, that's not overeating.
Right.
It's like, oh, I was a little hungry, so I ate the extra French fry. It's not going to make or break you.
Right.
A binge eating episode, sometimes people report, like, pretty much blacking out. Like, they don't even remember that it happened. Not really, you're not 100% cognizant of what it is that you're doing. You're just going. It's usually based off of emotion and not so much like I'm hungry, so I'm eating a lot. It usually doesn't have much to do with hunger. It's about that fulfilling that emotional need for whatever the food is filling in that void.
Right. That's a good way to clarify it too, because some people, I think stemming it down to, what do you consider overeating to begin with? Is it that French fry? Is it 200 calories extra? Is it 2,000 calories extra? Right.
And just a question I think I've heard or have myself does there need to be a certain frequency for it to be called binge eating, or even if it appears every now and then, could it still?
It can pop up every now and again. It's usually a prolonged thing. It's not like a one-time thing. Like you go out with your friends and you have bottomless chips and salsa at like Jose Takeoffs. Like not like that.
Right. Okay.
Like that's something like you're just, you're enjoying yourself, and that's part of having that balance of like being disciplined is not the same thing as being so rigid that you can't enjoy yourself.
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, over a prolonged amount of time, if somebody has a binge eating disorder, yes, it's something that happens over and over again.
Right. Now, what are some like unhealthy behaviors that somebody may recognize in themselves or recognize in somebody else? And is it, to clarify, some people, they'll recognize an unhealthy behavior, but it literally only happened one time in their entire life, right? Versus a pattern that's happening multiple times a day, multiple times a week, once a month, whatever it is. So what are some unhealthy behaviors and things to recognize? Like maybe I need to sit back and have a conversation with myself as to what's really going on here.
Okay. I mean, a big thing to recognize is it triggered by something?
Right.
Like, did something traumatic happen, or are there difficulties in your life? Like, are there underlying reasons as to why it's happening? So that's definitely a pretty big indicator.
Right. And then what advice would you have for somebody if they do analyze this pattern? Like, what is something that you would discuss with somebody who's analyzing this pattern, and how can they go about correcting it? And we know it's something that doesn't change overnight. Right. So that's something that I would guess that they would work with a therapist, somebody like yourself, to kind of recognize these behaviors, these patterns, and go about changing coping mechanisms and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do is I would give them a round of applause for recognizing, okay, something in my life doesn't feel right. I need to do something about it, because that's always the first step. If somebody were to reach out to me and say, hey, I think I'm struggling with an eating disorder, can we work on this? Determining the level of care is also extremely important. So if you have someone who is refusing to maintain their body weight. They're not eating. Maybe their organs are shutting down. Their teeth are rotting. Their hair's falling out. That's probably not an outpatient setting. So what I do is outpatient, literally kind of like this, is I sit in a Zoom or a FaceTime or a telehealth or any of those, means of communicating. And what we'll do is we'll determine what exactly is going on. So typically people with a binge eating disorder, they often don't need a higher level of care. Sometimes I'll recommend like an IOP, which stands for intensive outpatient, where maybe they can attend a group a couple times a week, definitely learn some coping skills from that, as well as having individual one-on-one therapy. So yeah, like when someone is going through this, determining if they're in the correct level of care is important, because you're not going to want, and yourself included, I'm sure you know this, like if you have somebody coming in who looks not okay, like right. Physically, you don't really know what's going on in their head, but if they look like they are not okay, you assess them, right? When you have a new client, you kind of do like an intake with them.
100%.
What are your diet habits now? Like, what are your behaviors in the gym and things like that?
Right.
And just kind of going from there is always a good jump off point as to whether or not they maybe need to be hospitalized or inpatient, because we don't want someone passing out, hitting their head, like all of these things that are a concern. Like that was my concern about the girl I saw in the gym. And it's very important that we don't overstep what we are capable of doing. It is never a bad thing to say, you need extra help.
Right, right.
And that's something I think we see a lot of in our industry. You've seen it where, not to bash on trainers, but let's bash on trainers. Trainers like to act like, I'm going to be your nutritionist, therapist, nurse, hormone therapy, and I got it all. Don't you need anybody else? And I think some of the more dangerous things are, how do you talk to someone who has one of those people in their life, and how do you get them to recognize that the person may not be who you should be trusting? Because some of the people in our industry really come off with these big, arrogant attitudes. I don't know how the best way to put it.
No, you got it. That's right.
Yeah. And they, when someone's in a vulnerable spot to begin with, it can be a rough relationship in that power dynamic. So what would you advise in like almost getting out of that dysfunctional, realizing you might be in a dysfunctional trainer relationship?
Good question.
All right. So the one thing is, no one likes unsolicited advice. So unless someone asks you, hey, this is happening, what is your opinion on it? They're typically not going to want to listen to what you have to say. But if somebody does come forward, or it's a good friend or a family member, and you're recognizing this, just talking to them about why it's important to know somebody's credentials, right? Like, what is your actual knowledge? Was it from Facebook.com? Was it from Pinterest? Or was it from a reputable source?
Right. I say it louder for the people in the back. Yes, thank you.
Right. Like, there's nothing wrong with wanting, like, again, like to be a support system, but a person who is supportive is not the same as a therapist. Like,
right.
It is very difficult to have that type of conversation with a family member. And sometimes the family member could be what's triggering the eating disorder in the first place.
Yeah. And we're going to go into that in just a moment. So kind of talking about,
just one more topic on that.
Sure.
So maybe for people who don't recognize they need help in that situation, what would you say, outside the credential thing was an awesome answer.
Yeah.
So you may not be another answer outside of that, but what would you say are things to watch for to make sure you're not in one of those relationships?
Okay.
I know it's a weird question. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. I mean, if you are talking with someone who is a very all or nothing type of person, and I don't mean like people who are super motivated. That's not what I mean.
Yeah. No, we know. Yeah.
Like, carbs are the devil. You can't eat carbs.
Yeah.
I got you.
Right.
Like, looking for things like that. And like, I know you guys preach balance. I preach balance in people's lives, and it's essential, especially if you get a client in who is prone to an eating disorder, who has binge eating or any of those behaviors. You never want to tell that person, you can't have this, because sometimes that is going to trigger a binge eating episode, because you told them that they can't.
Yes, and that is,
it's a control thing. I want to control what I put in my body, what I take out of my body, and all of these different things.
And that is the number one thing that we see with people. Whether somebody tells them not to do something, they're going to want to do it more, or there's that severe restriction, them feeling like they can't do it, and it then rebounding. So
I just have an end before if you're going to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, and I go end. I think normalizing unhealthy mental situations. I think some people glamorize being the martyr, feeling miserable, glamorize. I'm supposed to feel like shit during,
that's the worst.
And I think that's really dangerous as well. I hear that a lot.
It's
Is,
the worst.
aren't I supposed to feel like crap when I'm doing this?
No.
There's days that'll be harder than others.
Feel tired.
Yes,
yeah.
Like that. But again, if you feel like you are about to pass out and smack your head into the Stairmaster, it's probably time to take a step back, talk to your coach, talk to your nutritionist, and, figure out, okay, we need to do something. Because at the end of the day, what's the most important? Your health.
Right.
Without your health, you can't do much of anything else.
Exactly.
I mean, you've seen so many athletes do one show and then have a rough relationship with the gym and fitness for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the most common thing that we see amongst I'm not even talking about shows right now, just our general clientele, people who have come to us that have hopped from fad diet to fad diet, severe restriction, fear of foods, is binge eating. It's the number one thing that we see most often. A question that they ask is, and most of this is associated with guilt, but what would you say to somebody that is having trouble not allowing their one meal turn into a whole day, turn into a whole weekend, turn into a whole week, a whole month of just cyclical binging? Like, what would you advise for somebody like that?
A failure to plan is a plan to fail.
Yeah.
So if you have a plan, if you're working with a nutritionist, if you're working with a coach, have a plan. This goes for before your show, this goes for after your show, or even unrelated. Like, say you're not even competing. Now, obviously, like the dietary things we were talking, I was just kind of scrolling through the comments a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if somebody's prepping for a show, obviously there are certain foods that are going to be taken out, but it's temporary because as soon as you're done competing, you start to introduce these things back into your diet. So I just wanted to kind of like
separate the two.
Yeah, so it's not that like, no, you can't have that in the same sense as like you're prepping for a show. It just means certain things have to get cut for right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So with in regards to not allowing a cheat meal, and that's why like I'm guilty of using the word cheat meal. I really am. But at the end of the day, like you're not cheating anything. You're just you're refueling.
Right.
That's what food is.
Right.
Food is fuel. Put it in your body because we are celebrating our body's ability to do things, to be able to lift weights, to be able to run, to do whatever it is that you're doing. We don't exercise to punish ourselves for what we just put in it. That's not what it's about. So when someone has a binge, what I recommend to them is you hop right back in that plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because you did that, if you had a slashed tire, do you slash the other three?
Right.
No, you fix the one that's slashed and you keep it moving. So if you fall off a little bit, it's okay. You just hop back on and you pick up right where you left off.
And I think that's
that's why, again, the support system is the most important. And if it's not your friends and family, it's your coach, it's your therapist, it's whoever is your safe space that you can.
And that's an opportunity for somebody to reach out. If they're like, oh, I have a flat tire, but I don't give a shit. I want to slash the other three now. Like, I just don't care. It was where you have to have that pivotal moment to maybe even reach out to somebody and talk to them, talk your way through it, Yeah,
and I think a good point with that too is we hear a lot of people, I had a bad day mentally and that led me to this. And I think it would be the same advice, if you're someone who's battling depression, anxiety, and like you said, it's coexisting with the eating disorders. If you've been having it under control, don't let that bad one day mean that you've lost control of the situation. It's one bad day, whatever plan you and your therapist have, whatever plan you've had with yourself, jump back on it. A bad day is not failure. It's just a bad day.
Right.
No, and most of the time it's not even a bad day. It's a bad moment.
Well, moment.
Yeah,
it's true.
So, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Like, sometimes, like, life totally shits on you. And it happens. It's part of life, unfortunately.
Called 2020.
Yeah. But it's a matter of how you bounce back from it. It's a matter of being resilient. And even if you think that you're not capable of being resilient, you are. It takes work. It's not something you just, like, open your eyeballs one day and, like, everything is all good in the hood and you have all your coping skills. No, and sometimes you have effective coping skills and sometimes they don't work in certain instances. So that's when you go back to the drawing board and you figure out what's going to help you moving forward.
Right. So how would you, what advice would you have for somebody who is having anxiety in social situations? So they have a plan, they're going out to a barbecue, they're going out to a party, they know that there's going to be drinks and food and desserts, they know that there's going to be people there saying, have some of my drink or have some of this cake when they truly may not want to. How do you handle situations like that?
Well, I like to tell people that no is a complete sentence sometimes, and you don't have to explain yourself if you don't want to. I mean, if you feel comfortable sharing why you don't do those things, that's your prerogative. Like, do you? But when it comes to especially alcohol, that's a big one. It's like, you don't have to give anybody any reason why. Like, if you know is no.
Well, that's what you said. Like Randy says, it's common, like just etiquette and courtesy to not question somebody about alcohol. Like, what if they are struggling with alcoholism and whatnot, or if they're an alcoholic? Same thing with food. And I think what happens with a lot of people is they will actually start to give their reasoning, but the other person doesn't accept it. And they say, well, why are you doing that? Well, that's weird.
And that's when I say no is a complete sentence. Like, you don't, like, no one has to get you. That's fine.
Right.
And I like that a lot, that no one has to get you comment.
And I think people need to have the confidence to have that outlook and to have that approach. And many do not have the confidence to do that, but you need to just do it once. Do it once and you're like, oh shit, I said no and no questions were asked. And they do need to practice it.
But sometimes change happens when we're uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much only.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that.
This is why this is why they pay her the big bucks.
This is why we bring the pros on this channel.
I'm giving her a check after this for $1 million.
You do this for money. You do this because you want to genuinely.
No, I'm joking. I'm just saying, you should be paid the big bucks. Let's rephrase that.
Lovely.
So the next one would be, how does somebody handle guilt associated with falling off plan? They feel guilty. Like, how do they move on from that? Because some people obsess and stay in that sensation and feeling.
So I guess how to get over the feeling of guilt of failure without letting it become a real failure. I don't like the word real failure. That was a bad word.
I would say, like, again, just like working with a therapist on coping skills for those situations. Like, what is something that you can do to feel less guilty? And that doesn't mean like go to the gym and run for 5 hours. That's not what that means. Like, really self-reflect to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again, right? Because you want to be kind to yourself.
Right.
Like, if you fall and you hurt your knee, you don't get mad and scream at your knee to do better. Like, no, you nurture your knee, you take care of it until it's healed. It's the same thing. Whatever triggered the binge, reflect on it, figure out why it happened, how do we avoid it from happening again? And if it does happen again, it's okay, because we'll have this bag of skills that we can use when something like this does happen, if it were to happen again. And part of the guilt is asking yourself, like, why are you guilty? What did you do? What are you guilty of? Did you murder someone? No.
I told people when they create new patterns and new coping skills, like when they're going through something like that, to write it down, like write it down, put it on the wall or something. So when you're in that moment, you have a visual and you say, okay, when I was feeling good and I was assessing all this, I told myself to do this and then to do this and then to do this. See if it works. See if you know, the steps you created when you were in a good frame of mind. See if you can start to follow them when you're in that challengeable state.
I'm a big fan of, journaling, or I like to call it auditing, and just taking a third person view of your behaviors, feelings, and actions, and not judging them, just putting them on paper and going, okay, here's what happened over the last couple of days. Yeah.
I just got a good question that came in. How do you help support somebody with an eating disorder?
Okay. It can be a little bit of a state. Or make comments on their body, whether they look like they've lost weight, gained weight, or anything. A good thing you can tell them is like, wow, you look really healthy, when you notice that they're doing well, because that has nothing to do with the shape of their body.
That's awesome.
Or the number on a scale. Just, you look really healthy. You can always extend support by saying, hey, if you ever need to talk, but like, we don't really want to mention exactly what it was, because people are defensive about it, especially if they're not ready to talk about it. So I think that's a good way of supporting somebody. And if they do talk to you about it, that usually means that they're reaching out and they do want to work on it.
Exactly.
And I actually have, I think, a follow-up to that we deal with sometimes in our world of, how do you bring up to somebody that they may need to see a professional for that issue? Outside of just the, hey, I think you need a therapist, which works, I'm sure, with some people, but...
Well, if you notice that somebody often like spills a lot of this stuff to you.
Yeah, that's what I'd be talking about,
Then you should say, like, I think that you would benefit from talking to a professional. And I love to help you out the best that I can, but I'm not a professional. So let's get you the information of someone who is. Because, I mean, granted, you guys are totally capable of handling these things at the same time. Like, how can you focus on doing your job as a nutritionist when you're handling too much? There's just too much going on.
Correct.
Well, I can't handle myself, so I can't.
What?
I said I can't handle myself, so don't think I can handle someone else.
But like, it becomes a lot if you put that on to somebody, whether it be a friend or a family member, and it can cause burnout for the other person. And it's not like in a negative way, we're like, oh my God, I don't want to be around this person anymore. But I mean, also when you're talking to people who are friends, family, whatever, they're going to have a biased opinion because they're in your life. They have a stake in your life. Whereas like a therapist is completely unbiased. They have no say in what you do outside of your therapy session. And it's really just an unbiased ear to help you reflect and process whatever it is that's causing the issues.
That's awesome. And I'm just the annoying person today. I have another follow-up. I think might be helpful to some people who've never seen a therapist. How would you describe, what it's like to be with a therapist? I think some people might be intimidated by it.
Well, I think it's an interesting experience for whoever decides to go. So I don't work with children. Very rarely I'll take an adolescent, but mostly it's like 18 and up. So with a lot of the adolescents that I see lately, it's been interesting because they're very open about therapy, like within their friend group. Like, oh, well, my therapist said this. I'm like, wait, you guys like talk about this stuff with each other? I thought that was really cool. But I mean, when it's the person's idea to go to therapy and they recognize, all right, something's not right, gotta make a change, awesome experience for everybody involved. Other situations where they're being required to go to therapy, or whether they're mandated, or like a parent is making someone go, or someone's being dragged to couples counseling, not always the best option. So people change because they want to. You can't make people change. You can't fix people. That's not what any of this is about. Someone has to recognize, this is happening in my life. It's not working. I want to change it. I want to make it better. And then it's an awesome experience. Honestly, since doing everything virtual, I do think that it's taken the edge off for a lot of people because there's kind of like this buffer. There's a buffer where like, you're not face with this person anymore. And I think people do feel a bit more comfortable being in their own surroundings. Like, I'm sitting in my home office, you're sitting in your bed. Like, this is great. People are comfortable all around. So I think it's been a good experience for everyone all around.
Awesome. And just so you guys know, on Instagram, there is a question mark button that you can ask us a question, and I can share your question with Kim anonymously. So if you're uncomfortable writing anything in the comment section, you can send that to me privately, and we can have Kim answer it, and I will share it all anonymously. And
Kim, for me personally, I've been to therapy mandated and forced, and I've been to therapy willingly. The situation is very different, and you get what you get out of what you put in. You really do. But the cool thing is, I've been to therapists I've been addicted to, and I've been back to them. They're like, "Oh, you're ready." So they kind of are really on your side. You just have to believe they're on your side.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's against you. I mean, like, it's not like therapists get off on like making people's lives miserable and uncomfortable. Like, that's not what it's about at all.
I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
And it can be pretty life-changing once you realize that.
Yeah. So we were talking about a little bit of exercise bulimia. We have met people who are obsessed with the thought of having to go exercise after eating. And with these heart rate monitors and these trackers, they're like, I must burn the amount of calories that I just consumed. And that's another thing that is probably interesting on your end to talk about that,
Yeah, I mean, for one, those trackers, they're great. Like, I wear an Apple Watch to use it to kind of like track my workouts, but at the end of the day, it's never going to be completely accurate. Right. And even when you do weigh your food, like, to the best of your ability, again, it's not going to be 100% accurate. And again, like I said before, we do not exercise to punish our bodies. We exercise to celebrate our ability to do that. And how do we fuel our bodies? With food. Food, very, very important. And that doesn't mean all food is created equal, but it also is that you like. If there's something that you want to have, treat yourself. Like,
yes.
Don't like, it's great. And that's why I say, like, restricting is not good. And I mean, exercising excessively is not really restricting, but it is sometimes pushing yourself to a point where it's not healthy. Right. Like having excessive thought.
So here's another one. Anxiety over appointments. Now, I don't know if your people probably don't experience this, but every once in a while you get a client who will experience anxiety because they have to weigh in or do a scan. And I tell these clients, like, let's not focus on these numbers, but some are very hyper focused. We have some members that we don't let them see their weights. We don't let them see their scans. It's more for our purposes. But for those who are fixated on these numbers and experiencing this anxiety approaching their appointment, what advice would you have for them? Or even for us?
Exactly what you just said. Exactly what you just said. It's like for some people who either get upset by the numbers, have them turn around, have them not look at what the number is. And also the biggest thing I try to explain to people, the number on a scale is literally your relationship with gravity. We live on Earth. We have gravity here.
Damn right.
So that's all that is. And you and I both know that the number on a scale has nothing to do with how you feel, how your clothes fit, and all those different, aspects that are also, like huge indicators that you are moving in a good direction.
Yeah, we talk about like those non-scale victories or performance goals, things that have nothing to do with your scale, or even the inconsistency or the percent error on technology, like our Fit 3D scanner, like a bioelectrical impedance. I mean, I can go get my body fat assessed, go drink some water and get a completely different body fat percentage after that. People need to chill with that hyperfixation and understand that there's percent error in all of these devices as well.
Yeah, and then also, and I was also going to say, what is your advice to, we see some people that if they have a bad week, like, I'm not going to come in, I had a bad week. Where, again, I think in your world, similar, if someone's having a bad mental health week, that's exactly when you need to be there. How do you kind of get that message across outside of just, hey, you should be here?
Well, yeah, I mean, like if you're having, whether it be a bad mental health week, I would just tell people it's like that's the most important time to come in. It's not just, I don't want to just hear the good things or the bad things. It's the combination of everything in between. And the same thing with like reaching your goals. With you guys, it's the exact same thing. Like you had a bad week, all right, whatever, come on in, let's talk about it. How can we maybe change the plan around a little bit to allow for a little bit so that you don't have to have that guilt feeling?
Right.
And one bad week does not mess up weeks or months.
Yeah, yes. As you say, bigger picture thinking. I go, there's 365 days in the year. You had 3 bad days. Chill,
Right. And like, what is even, again, it's like, what defines a bad day? Like,
right.
What? No.
Exactly. You can't undo all of that good work with one bad day. Chill.
Yeah.
And also sometimes when you think that your week was really off and then you go in and then you're like, oh, wow, either that wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or you actually ended up where you were supposed to be. Yeah. And it was just mental.
Yep.
And I think we see that with some people who are, I guess, the type A person, where if they're supposed to eat 150 carbs, they have 149 or 151, they're very angry. Any tips for those kind of people and kind of, I don't want to say chilling out, but chilling out a little bit?
Yeah.
Like don't obsess over like numbers. Like what are numbers? They are made up things that we just brought into existence. They're not real.
Good, I'm not paying my bills then.
He goes, good, I'm not paying my bills then.
People care about those made up numbers.
Oh.
Those are, if you don't want your lights shut off, those are pretty.
You and your fancy words.
But when
Sorry.
it comes to like being a perfectionist with things like that,
right.
It's still never going to be perfect because scales aren't 100% accurate. Like your food, like if 1 grain of rice is shorter than another, like is it a huge like no.
So that pulls in another interesting topic, and not everybody experiences this, but people who do have obsessive compulsive disorder, a little OCD, that happens. I guess that's something that they can work with a therapist on, right? What would your advice be on something like that?
Well, obsessive compulsive disorder is a whole different animal.
It's a whole other animal.
Yeah, but when it comes to the obsessions and the compulsions, like I am not one to push medication at people at all.
Right.
But sometimes with OCD, it is very beneficial.
He's an advocate for it, so. He's like,
work on it first. Use your coping skills and all of these things. But sometimes if it's still not enough, I will say meet with a psychiatrist, be assessed, just see what they have to say. I don't prescribe meds. They do.
Right.
Yeah.
See how good you are with referring out, right?
And I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I was a train wreck for a long time with depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and every therapist I went to is go, who hurt you? I'm joking, but
What's the trauma? What's the
and
trauma?
I go, I've had the best life ever. Nobody hurt me. I'm just a lunatic. And eventually I just needed.
Yeah, but that's the thing with mood disorders, though. It's like sometimes they can feel very out of control because you don't have control over your mood. So with people with mood disorders, I always say, go get assessed by a psychiatrist, see what they have to say about it. And even with medication, it's trial and error. Sometimes they put you on something that doesn't work.
No, we've been through that.
But the therapists help too, because they give you the tools for maybe the day the meds aren't working the best, or a little bit more self-reflection to deal with the guilt about behaviors you did do, or people the combination is priceless. You really do need both.
Right.
For not everyone. Everyone might not need the meds, but you definitely need the therapist.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important to have that person if you're going through, and even if you're not going through anything, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having somebody just to have as a support, whether you don't have it in your life or you just need that unbiased person. Right. To just vent. I have a couple people who are like, I just want to vent to you for 45 minutes and then hang up. I'm like, all right, let's do this.
Verbal vomit. Go.
They don't want any feedback. Nothing. I'm literally thinking of people off the top of my head right now. Zero from me. They just want someone to vent to. And oftentimes when it just spills out, you have your own like revelation, like, oh shit, okay.
Well, they talk themselves through it by getting it out verbally, out loud,
Right, and that actually usually works out to be the best, because it is absolutely nothing I said. You came to that conclusion on your own, so it's gonna stick.
It's true, exactly.
That's really cool.
So what are some other things that come to mind with all of these topics that we're discussing that you think people can benefit
or
from
maybe
hearing?
Anything we missed that you're like, ooh, I see Rev doing this and it's a problem.
So a big one that I do kind of want to touch on a little bit, and this is more geared toward, I mean, it can affect everybody, but it's extremely prevalent in the bodybuilding community, is something called body dysmorphic disorder.
Oh, yes. Go talk about it.
Chronic mental illness, which kind of manifests itself, and it's a fixation about something physical on you. And the reason why I say it can happen to anyone, but it's very prevalent in bodybuilding, is because you are literally being judged on your body. So whether you get feedback from a judge that just doesn't sit right with you and you just become hyperfixed, I've seen it on social media all the time. The judge said that I need rounder glutes, and then they're just like obsessively training glutes every single day, and then they're wondering why, like, I'm not making any progress. Like, you need rest. Like, you need to let your muscles, repair themselves. But it's kind of like that, and it happens a lot.
Yeah. And we do see it. It's to be honest, the majority of our clientele, they're not bodybuilders, even though people think they are. But this does exist amongst the regular clientele tremendously.
The old quote is, once you start, bodybuilding, you're forever small, because you're always now, it went from a time of never obsessing over what you look like to constantly obsessing. And when you get into that is, analyzing each and every, you're always going to find something that's not as good as this guy or not as good as that girl. And I think, I'm not the only one saying this, but Instagram and Photoshop and filters certainly don't help. Or seeing people in contest shape with 6 months of drugs in them.
Comparing yourself to other people. So body dysmorphia, comparing yourself to other people. Let's dive into that a little bit.
A huge thing is when people start to compare themselves to others. That really gets under my skin, and I want to shape people, but I can't. And I mean, the best way, I had a conversation with a teenager the other day about this, and she's like, I noticed, she's 16, I noticed that I don't look like a lot of my friends. I'm a little bit bigger than they are. And, and I was like, and that's very common for your age. And you know what? You might always be bigger than them, and one day you might not. What are you going to do about it? Because I don't know. I was like, yeah, because you're you and they're them. Not everybody is the same body type. Not everybody has the same genetic makeup. Some of your friends are on lacrosse. They play lacrosse a million times a week, and you're into art, so you sit and you paint and you create these beautiful paintings. And not every person is exactly the same. So we cannot compare ourselves to others. We don't know what other people's stories are. And kind of bringing it into that perspective, like she brought it. She's like, oh, okay.
I think that's such an amazing way of putting it.
Why I'm not the same shape.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that. Yeah, so you're not just saying, just because she's working out, you're also focusing on, look what you're doing. Look at the great things you're accomplishing, that with the time they're putting towards maybe their body, you're putting towards your mind or your family or X or Y or Z. And neither's good or bad. It just is.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remind people. I posted something the other day, not comparing yourself to other people's body, but their journey as well. And you see somebody who might be succeeding at something, but you don't know what battles they're experiencing, what obstacles they're trying to overcome every day. And in addition to that, you may see somebody who looks awesome, but they hate themselves and they're never satisfied. And they look like the best Instagram model out there, but they are not happy with themselves, or some people making themselves physically ill, or you might see somebody who looks amazing on Instagram and they battle an eating disorder that you don't know about. So you can't compare yourself to other people physically because you do not know their story, their obstacles, their possible eating disorders, or anything.
How long they put that work in. Like if you look like you are the perfect example. You are so dedicated and you put so much work into what you do. Now for someone who started working out a year ago, if they were to compare themselves to you, they would probably be extremely discouraged.
What do you say? Never compare your first base to somebody's third base or whatever.
Right. They don't know. I mean, if they know you, they know how much work to put into it, and then you can explain that to them. But if it was just some random person who saw you on the internet and they're like, wow, I'm good. I want to look like that. Why can't I look like that? I've been working at it for a year. But they don't know what it took for you to get to that point.
Right, exactly. I think what I'm seeing often with the guys in the industry right now, and the women too, they're looking up to an Instagram model or a figure in the bodybuilding world who is juiced up out of their minds. And these are 18-year-old boys, 19-year-old boys, 20-year-old boys who are looking up to these 35-year-old men juiced up out of their minds.
Especially frustrating is the ones that claim to be not doing drugs, and how do you say they're lying?
I'm mad, bro. I got this way off my protein powder.
And not that some people aren't, but
listen, I will never like knock someone for doing what they need to do.
No,
well, and that's a separate issue.
It's not even a knock to that. It's just these kids thinking that's.
Yeah, because I have no problem. I always tell people, I go, it's part of the world. It is what it is. But if you're going to act like you didn't, that's frustrating to someone who doesn't know better.
It's just,
that's the thing. Like, again, with the Photoshop, it's like, I've seen you in person. I know you don't look like that.
Right.
Post your picture.
Right.
And you look totally different. Like that leaves a very unrealistic expectation for people who are looking up to you or even want to pursue it. And then again, that leads to that body dysmorphia. It's like, oh, well, my stomach's not as flat as this person. It's like, yeah, because that person like used the app.
Or say, you see.
They don't carry that around with them in real life, though.
Yeah, you see bodybuilder X or Y say, you can look like me eating this meal plan. And go, yeah, kind of. But you're missing an important point there, which is neither here nor there, but give the whole story. And it's frustrating. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I get you. And that's why I always say just be honest about your intentions for what it is that you're doing.
Yes.
Especially if you have a following behind you that looks up to you. Like,
especially kids. Kids bothers me with more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's like, I don't know if I'm seeing it like from a therapist perspective where it's like, that's a liability on your, but it's not, because on social media, like there's no repercussions for doing things like that.
Right.
Yeah. And it becomes frustrating because you see it. I've been seeing more and more. I hate them getting into drug talk. We're getting into drug talk. People who aren't athletes thinking they have to do that to look good for real life. And I'm like, no, you really don't. You can look so good naturally. I go, yeah, are you going to be Ronnie Coleman? No, you're not. But you will look as good as any beach model out there.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just, just creating the realistic expectations, letting people know that everybody has a battle. Everybody has some shit going on. Nobody's perfect and has it all together. No, Josh, I saw Josh chime in with drug talk. Not that.
No, boring. It's boring drugs today. Not fun stuff.
And again, guys, hold on one sec.
Oh, we got questions.
This is anonymous. How do you cope with body dysmorphia?
Okay. Again, talking with the therapist about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a huge benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking to a professional who will help you make sense of why it is that you're feeling that way.
So let's use this as an example. Somebody that has attained a certain physique that was very lean, but not sustainable. And now they're at a healthy point in their life, but they're constantly comparing themselves to a point that they were unhealthy. That's something that you would discuss through therapy. Is there any advice you'd have for somebody right now?
Well, yeah, again, like kind of explaining that, like, do you remember how much time, effort, and dieting went in for you to look that way? Did you enjoy doing that all the time? Because when I competed, I'd be crying into my rice a lot of the night. I don't want this right now.
Your tears seasoned the rice.
Exactly. It just, brings that moisture back.
Salty.
Yeah. So you got to really ask yourself, like, is that something that is honestly sustainable? Like, did you enjoy doing that all the time? If the answer is yes, there's a way that you can maybe be a bit more strict with your diet if that's something that you're okay with. Some people are just programmed food is fuel. It doesn't matter what it tastes like. I'm able to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
They recognize the food is fuel. They can keep it going. But for anybody who wants to compare themselves to that, reminding them how much work, time, effort went into achieving that. And is that worth your time and attention right now? Or are you enjoying going out to eat with friends and vacationing and doing, and not having to like be so rigid like
that's
that?
awesome. And I love that so much because I'm a huge believer in the, what is worth it to you right now is a dynamic thing. There might be times in your life that is worth it to you. And there's others where do I want to, like, is that time and energy I want to spend there or do I want to spend it somewhere else? And I go, if the answer is I want to spend it watching Netflix with my wife or husband, great. That's a cool answer. It's not a bad or good thing. Just, is that your priority right now? Like I tell people, I go, I don't have abs right now, but I don't eat for abs right now. So I don't wake up every morning, look in the mirror and go, what happened? I'm quite aware of what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I'm good.
Like, for everyone, like some people are totally fine with like that's their lifestyle and they love it. And like, I praise you for that because it's not like that's not for me.
Right.
And it's not for most people, but that's the thing is like, that's another reason why you cannot compare yourself to other people because some individuals that is their passion, that is what they love, and it's like, yeah, man, do you.
Right.
But because you doing you doesn't mean I got to do that like at the same time.
Right. I think
that should be the title of this. You do you, I do me.
I think many people are still trying to figure out what their happy medium is. You're not going to be that shredded lean or your skinniest, quote unquote, but that doesn't mean you have to go to the extreme opposite unhealthy end of the spectrum either. Like you could be 10 or 15 pounds heavier than what you were at your leanest and be happy because you can go out, experience good times with your friends and family, be able to kick back, relax, enjoy your meals, but not so excessively that you're packing on 50 pounds, 60 pounds and so forth. But they need to understand, like, they need to be happy with where their physique is going to be at that point. Like, I think it's accepting that not shredded body, but also accepting I can live my life right now also.
Right. It's like your body has a happy weight and it's going to try to get back to that.
It is. And I can sit here and tell somebody they look amazing a million times, but they need to feel amazing. Right. And that's something that comes from within.
That's what I said. It's like you look healthy, you look good. And usually when you are your healthiest, you will be very happy.
Yep. And healthy physically, mentally, it all goes together.
It's all wrapped up in one big cozy tortilla.
I like it.
A little cornucopia.
My tortilla of mental health.
Exactly. And they really do. They all go hand in hand.
They do. They do. What else would you like to add tonight? Or if anybody has questions, please ask now anonymously. You could just hit the question mark.
Scrolling at the same time as talking. I am a terrible multitasker, so I have no idea if there are any questions.
You and me both,
there might
girl.
be, but there also might be a lot of...
Insert it is the cheat code.
Oh my God. Let's see. If anybody had questions that we missed because the Whippet triplets took over the
You guys were good tonight. You weren't bad.
And we have a lot of silent followers here too. So the silent followers, again, this is your chance to ask the questions anonymously.
And I guess while we're scrolling for questions, Kim, do you want to let people know where they could reach out to you or talk to you or find more Kim?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have private practice that I do with a couple of my friends, and right now we are all virtual, but we do have an office in Freehold. So at some point, if COVID ever gets under control, that's a whole different topic. Potentially we'll end up over there again. But for now, everything is virtual, and our website is youspsychllc.com. So that's YOUPS. Well, I'll link it somewhere so that it's easier for people to just look at. There's a number on there. You call it, and there's a few of us on staff who are, have a couple of openings right now. So
perfect. That's wonderful. I'm sure there's nothing I missed here.
Yeah. This is awesome, Kim. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. And, I think it's some valuable stuff you gave us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, I'm just always happy to help. And,
Thank you.
Even if people have questions that they do want to ask, like the live stream that we're doing, that is my professional account. So you can ask questions in direct message over there if that's something that you want to do. If you needed to reach out in any other form for other reasons, like go through Randy and Michelle. Like they'll reach out to me and make it happen. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, guys, utilize her. She is an amazing person who's involved in this world and knows how to take care of you after.
I miss seeing you guys. I miss having my fanny pack buddy. It's just not.
Yo, fanny pack girl. We
Yeah.
we shall reunite soon.
Yeah.
We will make it happen. Fannies come together.
And thank you for introducing us to your pup as well.
Oh yeah, she's
like, I'm over you guys.
She ran downstairs now, but yeah, she's like.
So if anybody, hey Sabrina, if anybody that you know would benefit from watching this, I don't think I can save it on our Instagram wall because we're splitting the screen right now, but I did record it on Zoom, and as long as everything went according to plan, it will be posted on our Revolutionized YouTube channel.
And then we'll be sharing it back to the regular social medias that way.
And then we can share it back onto our IG Live. So stay tuned on that. That way you guys can catch this back tomorrow when most of our viewers actually do tune in. So Kim, you're wonderful. Kim Goodhartz, everybody.
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Listen, if more people can get involved in mental health, the world will be a better place.
I couldn't agree more.
And Nicole says, thank you, everyone. This is amazing. All right, everybody.
Good night. Stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy.
We love you.
Yeah.
I love you too, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I have a drink to sip on.